What is this piece of paper that I found under the floor of my 18th century house? And how long was it there for? Until a couple of weeks ago, this room had a floor of beautiful terracotta tiles. But as part of my renovation work, I've had to lift out the tiles and remove the dirt below them. And then in this corner, I noticed something a bit different. I found a few things in the floor of this house, like broken pottery and glass, but never a piece of crunched up paper. So when I saw it, I was really intrigued, especially when I saw that it had some printed text on it. Welcome to my office and my research desk. The view is wonderful, but the landlord really needs to get a move on with the renovation work. When I first saw the paper, I was really pretty excited, but then when I took a slightly closer look, I thought that bit of paper couldn't possibly be from 1714, and I started to feel a little bit disappointed that perhaps I was wrong about the dates and the history of some parts of the house. Anyway, I was still very keen to find out more about the paper, so when I got home I started to brush off the mortar. In case you're worried that I'm repeating the exercise on the bit of paper, don't be alarmed. The actual bit of paper is now in this plastic envelope here, and this is just the mock-up. And having got quite a lot of the mortar off, I was able to see pretty clearly that from the structure of the text, this was almost certainly from a piece of newspaper. The print is quite small, but with a magnifying glass, I could read the well-structured Spanish sentences quite easily. I could see some names on both sides of the paper in capitals. And these people seem to be talking about a railway line in Manzanares. So then I started doing two things. I started to look really carefully at all the text on the paper for clues of a date, and I started to search the internet for the names that I could see in the paper that were in bold. The first thing I found was a website about the railway line in Manzanares that included photos of its construction. And then I found a website with scans of very old copies of the Spanish Gazeta newspaper, which appeared to have articles with the same names that appeared in my paper. After looking at a lot of scans, I eventually found something that blew me away, because in one of the scans was the exact text that was on my paper. And now that I could see all of the words in the article, I could see that it was a reproduction of minutes from a meeting of politicians in the Spanish Parliament on June the 21st, 1860. The session was held in the Congress of Deputies space and was being chaired by the Marquess of Viga Amigo, with the Minister for Public Works, the Marquess of Corbera, answering questions and challenges from the floor. These appeared to be coming from all sides, especially from Señors Otes Serrata, Ardenaz, and a number of others.
Capital realizado por la empresa.
Al oír que la enmienda de Sustiguiala sobre la creo que debo pedir algunas explicaciones.
32 millones de sus
estaba
acciones
pidiendo la
realizadas.
libertad del crédito.
Tercero,
y se agujeraron
otros 32 que se le permiten emitir en obligaciones.
I then started to look more carefully at one of the other articles that was far from complete, but I could see clearly mentions of two other newspapers, the English Morning Post and the German Ostdeutsche Post. And then I saw a name I recognized, that of Giuseppe Garibaldi, one of the unifiers of Italy in the 1800s. And this article appeared to be a report talking about Garibaldi's ongoing campaign of fighting in Sicily, which was also happening in June 1860. And after a lot of careful looking, I eventually found what looked like a date on the bit of paper, and it did indeed say 1860. Before finding this bit of paper, I did know that railways in the 1800s were often talked about in the same way that AI and cryptocurrencies are now. It was the cutting-edge technology of the day. But I didn't really know anything about Spanish railway lines in the 19th century, and I didn't know how overinvestment in railways in Spain had then contributed to financial and then constitutional crisis in 1868. So without wishing to overplay the importance of this scrap of paper, the articles in it were at least about topics that were more important than I had originally thought. But what are the implications of this scrap of paper and its date to the story of the house? And how did this bit of paper end up under the floor upstairs? I think the evidence of this house being built in the 1700s, most likely in 1714, is still pretty strong. But for the floors on this whole level, and perhaps the vaults that they are above, maybe they were installed for the first time or repaired in 1860, when some other work might have been done to the house. Maybe it was kind of an early version of the renovation work that I'm doing now. Maybe the rector had recently read the newspaper and gave it to the builders when they asked for materials to go in the floor. Or maybe a labourer just picked up the paper, ripped it up, threw it in his mortar mix, and then covered it with tiles. Whatever did happen and however it ended up underneath the floor tiles, I'll never know. But now it's here, and I think I'd like to get it framed and perhaps at some stage put it on the wall in this room. I hope you've enjoyed the story of this bit of paper and the glimpse into the past that it's given you. As I do my work in the house, I'll keep my eyes peeled for other interesting things, and if I do find any, I'll obviously include them in future videos. On which note, my next video in a few days' time will be about some other aspects of the house's history that I'd like to share with you before I make too many further changes. So I hope to see you then.